Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest-running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. I'm Christian Karasevich, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sarah Monroe. Sarah, it's great having you back for yet another episode. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing great. Great.
Today we're going to be talking. Yeah, what are we talking about today?
Big news in wearables. You know, I just pulled out some sunglasses. These aren't quite what we're talking about
those,
today.
I have these.
Yeah. So you got the real thing. But we're going to talk about a big play by Facebook in the wearables market. We're also going to talk about Twitter making progress in e-commerce and a few other tidbits of social media news. But our guest today is Brooke Sellas, who is the founder and CEO of B Squared, which is a digital marketing agency. And in addition to doing that, she also organizes a conference called the Hello Conference every year. Well, maybe not every year we can be in person for Brooke's conference, but she has incredible blog and e-newsletter and just has great nuggets of information and really client focused and customer focused, which doesn't always happen in the social media space. We get all wrapped up in what's happening in the latest thing and let's try these things. And she really is focused on her customers and having a conversation.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm going to go and bring on Brooke. For those of you, by the way, who are watching, we're broadcasting out on youtube.com/social chefs right now, but we're also testing something out. We're talking on Twitter Spaces as well. So if you just go to @socialchefs, you'll see there's a purple icon, and hopefully you can join that space and just listen in there. So Brooke, it's great having you join us yet again. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me back.
Anytime. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Brooke was on episode 265 with us. That was actually, I think that was almost a couple of years ago, actually.
Was it? We're like in a time warp right now. I still try to call this is 2020 to me still right now, right. Even though we're almost at the end of 2021.
Definitely.
Well, if we do our math though, there's 52 weeks, 52 social chatters in a year. So about a year ago, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little less.
So like yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, like yesterday.
So we're excited to have you join us. I know we've got some questions for you later on in the show. We want to talk to you about, obviously, because we know that I don't think you use a lot of tools at all in social media. And that's, a lot of people, they have too many tools they're using, right? And so we want to talk to you about that, talk about how do you actually manage things a little bit, without having all those tools. What does that actually help with and so forth? But I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. We're going to kick things off. So Sarah, what's the first topic we want to talk about this week?
So the first topic, just in time for holiday shopping, is a wearable from Facebook. And so this is called Ray-Ban Stories, actually. And so these images were leaked this morning. If we do the how it started and where it's going, this is the research product of the Ray-Ban spectacle, or the Ray-Ban Stories, or the Facebook smart glasses. But what's nice is that Facebook actually thought ahead and thought people will want to wear these, and we want people to wear these. So let's have a partnership with a brand that people like to wear. So Ray-Ban, the classic Wayfarer, and you can barely see that there is a camera in those upper two corners where the lenses kind of come to a point and where the side pieces attached to the front piece. And then it looks like the battery and the camera and the memory will be along the sides. So definitely beautiful design. Finally, for a wearable, if any of you have ever worn a Google Glass or a Snap spectacle. And there's Christian wearing the Snap spectacle.
I got to say, Sarah, so I do like the fact that you highlighted, it's one of those trade-offs. Like, these are the Snapchat spectacles. And like, I like the touch of yellow, and I understand, I think the reason they're doing that, but I think those Ray-Bans look a lot better. Whole lot better.
Exactly. So we had heard over the last year about Facebook launching something like this, and they were talking about it in their AR space. I think it's called it's Project Aria, where they are trying to really map first-person experiences, walking through spaces, walking through public spaces, which is a huge step forward from an accessibility standpoint. A lot of people have a lot of questions about privacy, so they're still working that out. Which is why this first iteration of a product is just the glasses, just the camera, and no other weird and wacky AR that will come with it. But we know it will come. We know it will come because Facebook has Oculus. They also had the Workroom that they released a few weeks ago. So it just makes sense. Here's the next step in making that easier to use. So what do you guys think?
Who wants to take? Go ahead, Brooke. You want to take this?
I'm not excited yet. I know. I know. I hate to be a pessimist, but like, we had Google Glasses, and then we had Snapchat spectacles. I'm just, for me right now, knowing that there's no AR capabilities, which they did talk about, like the heads-up display that's coming, which is so cool because, by the way, I have that in my car, and it's life-changing with how I drive. So I know I will get excited about it, but until the AR becomes an actual reality and we have that heads-up display, I'm like, okay, next.
Yeah. I have to say, I do love, like, I now have my car's navigation is now Google Maps too. And so I can see, oh, that's what that building is that I've always wondered about that I'm driving by, right? So I can see that there's a lot of fun involved with it, but there's also a lot of information overload that's going to come with AR and wearables.
And here's the thing, everybody's getting, I mean, right now, for example, Brooke, I'm looking at you, and you've got AirPods in, and you've got glasses on. So for example, I do wonder, these are going to be something that, like, people are people with glasses, how are they going to wear these? Unless they're going to have some sort of lenses at the beginning where, like, you can either replace, who knows, maybe we'll be able to replace them. I don't know. I got to say, I do like the design. I like the fact that they're partnering with Ray-Ban on this to get them into the masses. That also means that this will be an easier sell, I think, too, to people, because they'll probably, I think Ray-Bans, I think Sunglass Hut, are those still around?
Oh, yeah.
People go to your Sunglass Hut because they'll buy their Ray-Bans in the airport, for example. Hey, take these on your trip. The fact that they're going to tie into, they're calling them Ray-Ban Stories. They're not really branding them as Facebook. I like that aspect, but it does go back to, there's no AR at all on this ball.
Right.
Well, I think you're right, though. That was a smart merchandising play, right? Facebook doesn't make wearables. Well, they're getting into wearables, but they don't make glasses, right? So they let somebody, a behemoth in the space, much like themselves, take that on, and the co-marketing and co-branding with a brand like Ray-Ban, I think, is really smart. I also think, like, getting away from, like, the kitschiness of, like you were saying, like with the Snapchat spectacles, and making it more like practical and like real life looking. Yeah. Again, for me, it makes sense. I do like that play.
And there's an excellent, I think you had a video too, right, Sarah? Like, I think we had a video.
There is a video. Ray-Ban. So Ray-Ban is the one who's been pushing out more content about this lately. So on their Facebook and Instagram reels, they posted a reel that shows sort of the first person perspective that the glasses will show you. And I don't know if the video is going to play here for us, but we can certainly tweet it out and share it. What's interesting, it is the sort of the first person perspective. So if you think of people holding a camera and just walking around with it, if you think of, there was the company called Beam a few years ago, Casey Neistat's company, which was really, have your phone just running live video all the time. And I have to laugh. I wonder if it's just going to up the game for those Instagram husbands or Instagram significant others that have to take all those pictures, if it'll actually solidify the use of Reels, right? Because here is something that's very easy to use, a bit more inconspicuous, and you can get some great content.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so let me do this. Let me try to actually play this video. Let's see if this will actually play. Because the other thing is, like, it's highlighting like the situations of when people might use this. For example, so like, one of the big trade-offs, I guess, is like, if you ever want to play video, one of the big challenges is trying to hold that or film video, it's trying to hold that camera at the same time. So let's just see what we have here. Here we go. Yeah. So this is, let's see if it actually plays. It did freeze, I guess. Let's just see. Yep. So that's weird. I wonder what's going on with the player. But yeah, basically, Facebook's showing these in various situations, which again, if you think about it, that actually ties in really well with the Ray-Ban aspect of this, because, people are gonna, if they're gonna go boating, for example, because there's a few boating scenes here, for example, or kayaking or things like that, they're gonna wear their Ray-Bans because they want to look good. Again, they want to look good doing something. So in this case, they want to look good, potentially creating video for Facebook. Kind of neat.
Right.
I will say, the privacy aspect is super important to me on this. Like, again, I could see this totally being useful. Like, if it could do auto tagging and all that sort of stuff of people, but then it also comes back to, do people really want to, like, some people don't want to be on camera, or they don't want to be filmed in a lot of these, kinds of situations.
Right. We already get shown ads on what we talk about, right? Now we'd get shown ads based on what we see. That's a lot of ads.
And I do like the fact that it does potentially, I like that it discloses it could potentially disclose the location of where you film the video using, obviously, some, some sort of tie-in, whether it's in the actual glasses or, kind of what Apple has done, which is Apple's put their responsibility on the phone and then had the devices connect to the phone for the most part. So I wonder if Facebook would try to maybe do something like that with that. So.
Right. And remember, even things like Fitbits have revealed very covert military bases because people were using their Fitbits for their runs. So I think with any new technology, it's really important, Christian, like you said, to think about privacy, think about how you're using this, think about how it's connected. You may be able to just wear your Ray-Ban stories and record video that only stays for you. It becomes your home movies, right? And sort of documents your life or your children or your pets or whatever you want to document. It could be great learning tools. I think there's a lot of applications for this. And because Ray-Ban isn't just a sunglass company, my optometrist's office carries Ray-Bans. And so if I wanted to swap out tinted lenses for regular lenses for my prescription, I can. So I think it's a huge market to use a company that already makes the product that you're integrating the cameras with.
So let's do this. Let's talk about this because the other part of this that gets me super excited is the business aspect of this. So if for example, if a business is like, well, you know what? I don't, they're not active on social media, or they want to create more engaging content for their customers. I could totally see these being useful for that. For example, put these on, let's just say these happen to be them, even though these are the Snapchat version, put these on, start recording, for example, record you opening the box, for example, or like, hey guys, I got a cool surprise. Like, so some really neat things I think you could do with these from a business perspective. What do you all think about that? Anything you could think a business could use?
I think Facebook had that in mind when they did this, because it would be a huge boon for brands using influencers to promote their products, right? And like McKinsey, I think it was, just released a report recently talking about purchases through social media and how a lot of them aren't planned. And that a lot of them come from influencers, right? So if we know that influencers are pushing purchases more and more through social, and an influencer is given a brand's Facebook Ray-Ban glasses to unveil, unbox, whatever it is, like promote the product as they do, I think Facebook had that in mind when they put this out, because influencer marketing is just such a huge opportunity all around. And this only makes Facebook almost, it gives them a leg up, right? With influencer marketing, the brands would want these out to their influencers, which means they would be partnering also with Facebook and using the Facebook platform and product.
Right. Well, and think about just that little clip of the water skier, right? There were at least a half dozen products. And, this was an Instagram ad that I fell for, right? So we see the products, and they're now trying to integrate shopping into the videos, into images, into everything, so that you can create that. But I also see a place for it. Say that you have an HVAC company, right? They're coming into your house. You're not there. They can put on the Facebook store, the Ray-Ban stories, right? And you can see them where they are, what they're doing in real time to make sure they're not snooping through your drawers or raiding your refrigerator, right? So
almost like a body cam. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. That's cool. That's a cool concept.
And I like adding to that. I actually like the idea of again, this is when the AR aspect comes into play. Imagine now, okay, so phase one is okay, they can do some recording. I think you may even have a live feature probably come to this. Again, speculating on this. This is actually getting announced today. So, or supposedly it's getting announced today.
We keep refreshing the page.
But what's cool about it would be, okay, so I think phase 2 will be or version 2 will probably be a live aspect. There will probably be, and then if I'm a business, imagine when the AR aspect comes to this, where people, somebody puts this on and they're able to look at something and it's even able to pull the information, kind of going back to your example, Sarah, about buildings, having these on and then being able to say it's an HVAC company, they want to diagnose something, they can easily have the person put the glasses on and have it bring up that HUD, that heads up display, where it's showing them, well, this piece is broken, for example, or it seems like this piece is maybe this one's at, a 70 or 50% failure rate or something like that,
Right. Well, my mechanic does the same thing. They have to use their phones to do it though. They say, here's your multi-point inspection, and they run through the car with their cameras, and then it goes into my record, my medical record for my car. And so I can refer back to it. So I think it's a great tool. I think it'll be a great learning tool too. Way back when I used to be a scientist, we actually were working on sort of an augmented reality surgical field. Nice. And so now you don't have to put on those huge headsets. That's one thing that I don't like about Oculus, is that huge headset, and you lose all perspective of what's around you. And, for some people that balance, they just can't handle it. So I think what's great about these is that you could have that heads up display, like what Brooke was talking about. And then you still have a sense of what's going on around you.
Anything else you want to add on this, Brooke? I mean, I'm super excited about these. I am going to be refreshing that page throughout the day just to see how much these are going to be. I got to say, from a cost standpoint, I don't know how much they're going to cost, but I would like to see them come in less than the spectacles, because spectacles have been out for a few years. Brooke.
I was just going to say, I think price point's going to be important. And that would be hard to get right, knowing that they don't have the AR component in there right now. I'm just thinking if this were me, gosh, that would be really difficult, because I have this product that doesn't have all of the features yet. So how do I price it? Or is it going to be priced different later with the AR added? I'm assuming is a different model, different product. But I would be interested to know the pricing. And like I said, I'll be really interested once we have that AR component built into the product.
Right. Which hopefully is just a firmware update. If they're designing it right, it's just some software that they can change out. So let's also keep in mind the base cost of a pair of Ray-Bans, right?
It's so as you're mentioning this, Sarah, I'm actually looking up how much the base cost of a pair of Ray-Bans is, because that's an excellent point. Because, okay, so they've got Oculus. Oculus is how much?
300, 400, something like that.
So I'm going to put this in the Apple perspective. Okay. So the reason I'm going to put this in Apple's perspective is because Apple comes out with, for example, they come out with a phone or a laptop. They have to price the iPad, the watch, the smart tags, the air tags, for example. They got to price all of those so that somebody's not paying, $300 for air tags when, for that same price, I could buy an iPad or something like that. Right. And so, let's see how much the Oculus is actually. So what is it? The Quest 2, I think. Is that right? So Oculus. Okay, so Oculus is $290. This is going to be very fascinating. Oculus, from what I can see here, Oculus Quest 2 is $299. Obviously goes up to like $600. Okay. So Ray-Bans are 200 and change for the original Wayfarers. So what do you think? Do you think these are going to fall maybe in the middle?
I was thinking like a $400 price point.
That's what I was 300, 325.
Yeah. $399.
Yeah. $399. $279.
By the way, speaking of, like, remember Bose, I'm just throwing Bose in this mix because Bose has their Bose frames, which are sunglasses. By the way, this is the big dilemma everybody's going to run into, which is all of these products, like you can't wear multiple pairs of sunglasses at once. And so Bose makes good speakers, but hey, they don't have any augmented reality or camera capabilities. And so they use bone conductivity instead of actual headphones. And they're running in the range of like 200 to 250. Then they're got
very cool products, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can change the lenses out, put polarized ones in there. So then you've got now the Ray-Ban ones, which are going to be camera capability. Probably, I'm assuming there's no bone conductivity, unless maybe there is. Who knows? And then I actually think Apple's coming out with something next week.
Yeah.
So
I think the Ray-Ban stories are camera only. I don't think there's audio to it. I think it's just visual.
Yeah.
So, for those who won't be able to use that heads-up display unless, like you said, maybe it can Bluetooth to something, and it may be able to. I can see it for people who are visually impaired. It can actually narrate what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so final guesses on price. What do we think these are going to cost? Again,
$399.
Okay, so Brooke's saying the Facebook Ray-Ban, Facebook smart glasses, also called the Ray-Ban Stories, $399. Sarah, what do you think?
I'm going for $325.
$325. I'm going to go with $299. Actually, $297. Sorry, I'm going to go with $297 because a whole marketing trick is that whole $7 thing. Again, it's like when somebody says, "Hey, it costs less than $300." It's $299.99. It's still less than $300. But that's my guess. Okay, so we'll make sure we update you all later on today because it looks like the Ray-Ban website's down, by the way. So I think they're getting ready to launch these. So we'll see. If you have a guess, by the way, just put it into, if you're on whatever platform you're on, put it in the comments or put it in the tweet and tag us. We want to hear how much you think the Ray-Ban stories are going to cost. Okay, Sarah, I'm turning it over to you because I know we got other topics we want to cover this week.
Yes, we've got some other topics. So this is a topic we're jumping back. We had talked about this in episode 303 earlier, is Twitter's play in expanding their e-commerce functionality. So it looks like it's coming a little bit faster. Again, limited audiences. But what they're going to let you do, they're rolling out actual images so we can see how you can actually shop or save a product from a tweet. This is going to be for business profiles only. It's starting in the US. It is going to be tied to the super followers options. It's not really clear how that's going to shake out. But basically, you're going to be able to shop for tickets and subscriptions to Twitter Spaces, and any products that you purchase will be part of your profile. So actually, when you look down your row of in your profile, your little row of saved or other options there, you're going to see purchases too. One thing I have to say about Twitter, which is great, is that they're really taking their time with this. They've been talking about it all year. They've been putting out little nuggets of information and some functionality to different people, but they're really being thoughtful about it and not racing to match some date on a calendar, right? Twitter really sees that they are a global app and that their opportunities for sales are year round and not just tied to December in the calendar. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because a lot of people do follow brands on Twitter. About 3/4 of Twitter users follow brands. So this is going to be a way to bring some of those great shopping things that we appreciate and see on other platforms into Twitter.
So I got to give a shout out real quickly to Mr. Chris Floyd. By the way, he's the one who actually discovered this whole commerce feature inside of Twitter. So quick shout out to him. He's at Mr. Chris Floyd on Twitter. Feel free to tell him you heard about him on Social Chatter. I got to say, I think Twitter is pulling an Amazon, and it's the fact that, if like Twitter's always got that stigma of like, it's a lot of spam. Not useful. Nobody's retweeting my stuff. Nobody's liking it, etc. However, if you look at a lot of the acquisitions they've been making over the past couple of at least a year or so, they've really been pushing hard to generate more revenue. And they've been coming out with like some really cool things, like the fact that you can, have somebody be like almost essentially like have a membership site, but with the super follows feature, the fact that you're going to have a purchases feature within here, the fact that they purchased review, I think it was, right, Sarah, where like you could create a newsletter that would go out, like a paid feature, for example, a tip jar, for example, for Twitter Spaces, like little small things, like taking some things in the physical world, bringing them into the digital world. I love this kind of direction things are going. What do you all, Brooke, what do you think about this? Is this something that a business could really tap into?
Oh my God. This makes me excited. This I'm excited about, because like, let's think about this. Let's take it even away from marketers. Let's think about this as a business owner. What has happened over the past almost 2 years now with COVID is that we've seen a flurry of activity head to online, right? Whether it's social, e-commerce, we've seen rise in a huge way, advertising costs. So, right. But just looking at it as a business person, people I think are scurrying to hop in onto the digital transformation bus, right? If they haven't already, I feel bad for those who haven't, but looking at the fact that Americans are on record to spend $1 trillion online in 2022. So if you think about e-commerce, right, we've got that big thing. I think everybody can grasp that concept, but think about what's happening underneath e-commerce. We've got live shopping. We've got social commerce. We've got conversational commerce. All of these things makes me I love Twitter, by the way. It's my favorite platform. So for me, Twitter making this move, I'm just over here like, in the stands, like being like, yes, like it's a home run. Yeah. It's a total home run. It makes so much sense. And then as a marketer and as a business owner who delivers marketing services, I'm very excited about this as well, because this will help our clients who are in that e-com space.
Right. I really like that Twitter is being thoughtful about this, right? I love Twitter Spaces much more than the other audio room options that are out there. And I like that they are being thoughtful, that they really are rolling this out slowly and putting in all of those things that we come to expect too when we talk about e-commerce, so that it is easier. And it's nice too that you can go back with your purchases. I mean, think about how many times you go back in your Amazon order list, right? I certainly do. It's like, when did I get that? And so, someone had asked me about my headset a few weeks ago. It's like, oh, right. Where did I find that? And sure enough, I can look it up. Just like the big, I think this actually came from B&H, not from Amazon, but I have an account with B&H. I can look it up. And so Twitter is putting that into their e-commerce, which I really like too.
Yeah, this is a super useful feature. I mean, and then also don't forget, by the way, if you've never heard of Square, so Jack Dorsey heads up Twitter and Square. And Square is basically a digital payment processing company. So natural progression here. It's going to go, I think, Sarah, you're excited about this one's going to go. Obviously, we anticipate that's going to tie into that. I mean, that would make sense versus using a third party. Right.
Especially I already have a Square account. I love it. I use it, most of the time I use it at these small cafes. I try to shop local, or I go to some street fair or something like that. And I try not to think about the tracking, right, in my behavior, but it's so much easier to just be able to tap into Square and be done, right? And if I really like the business, I can automatically just add myself to their email list and stay up to date with them.
And the other aspect of that too, as well, with the, just with the payment processing and whatnot on that, is that chances are, just think about it from a social perspective. So somebody makes a purchase at a vendor, for example, they've got their smartphone, or in this case, they could have their Ray-Ban stories, and they could probably snap a picture of it or a video and immediately push that out on their social channel without necessarily pushing out all of that potential that the receipt, all the, the payment information, things like that. They could actually though push out like a visual of the product they bought. Hey, I'm about to go, try this or eat that or check out this vendor, and so there's really good tie-in, I think, there. Brooke, is there anything else you want to add on this?
Yeah, I just think, if you're a business owner who has products, the fact that, and especially if you've already been active on Twitter, right? Because I know a lot of brands have shunned Twitter. So for those brands who've put in the time and the effort and now have built in communities on that platform, this is going to be a boon for them because they'll have these in-stream product listings. They'll be tied to the business profile, and then you'll be able to tweet content out direct from, Twitter that would potentially lead to a conversion. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Let's use a real life example, Brooke. Your Hello conference. You can sell tickets to the Hello conference on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Twitter. So it would be a boon for me. That's what I'm saying. I feel a little bit bad for those who maybe shun Twitter for a different platform, because like you were saying, Christian, like a lot of people are like, oh, it's spammy there. I don't like it there, whatever.
It's hard to shed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a love-hate thing, right? I guess kind of like all the social platforms, but I'm excited because, I've always put stock and value into Twitter. And so this makes me feel good about that decision to stick with them over the years.
Right.
I gotta say, you got me really thinking about this whole, like the commerce aspect, and then tying it into stories. And now you can have ticketed stories. And then you mentioned Brooke's conference, the event she puts on, like she could essentially do an audio version probably and push it out to just people who've paid for it on Twitter Spaces. So.
Yeah. The marketing implications and business applications are endless. Truly. I mean, it's only what's going to keep us from doing all these amazing things: lack of creativity and lack of budget. So if you have both or at least one, you'll probably be just fine.
So is there anything else you want to add about this whole Twitter commerce feature? By the way, we've got anything else you want to add, Sarah?
I don't think so. I think we can just jump seamlessly into the next piece of news, which is still about Twitter. And when we talk about Twitter being just this information fire hose, right? Twitter, I think, is recognizing that and is trying to make it a little more visually appealing. So what they're doing is going from where you used to have that little margin along the side below profile pictures. They are now going edge to edge with posts. And so it's going to stretch out, right? So that it looks a lot like everything else, right? To me, it looks a lot like Instagram. This is the dark version, right? But it looks a lot like Instagram. So the profile information is going to be across the top. Profile and post information will be across the top. And then those images and videos are going to stretch right out to the sides of your screen. So it's going to make Twitter much more visual too within this. And it makes me wonder, the way that they're showcasing these videos and things is, are they going to go to that portrait size video too? I mean, what they're doing is they're expanding it so that your landscape videos will be larger. So the next question is, are they going to turn it on its head and go longer portrait wise too? So, I don't know. It could be a good thing that there's more space for that beautiful content. It could be a bad thing that you're losing that white space too, when Twitter, like I said, is just such a fire hose of information. Sometimes it's nice to have that visual break, right? A little bit of white space to give your mind a little bit of a chance to process everything.
And the other aspect of that also is just really like, some people on social, they will they're trying to get the images perfect. And for those of you who've been in social media for a while, that is not an easy thing to do because things change. People are using different devices. Like, yeah, they're using a mobile phone, but they're using one that's, slightly, like one of them might be slightly bigger. Company decides, hey, they want to do like you've got the Samsung, was it the Fold, I think, so it's like sort of the same like dimensions, but there's a fold aspect to it. So you've got all these different like facets that come into play. I would say this, if you're making content and you're concerned about that sort of thing, I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about that. By the way, this is also iOS only at the moment. So, Brooke, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have an iPhone, and this change already occurred for me a few days ago. And I remember logging into Twitter and being like, oh, what happened? And then I figured it out, and I went from going like, oh, I love this, to like, oh, I kind of miss the white space. It's a little busy. So I feel like I'm getting used to it, and I feel like ultimately it will be a positive thing. But it does take some getting used to. It feels a little busier. And Twitter, as you were saying, Sarah, is already very busy. So it can be a little like, for someone like me who, has a touch of like ADD, it's like, where do I, squirrel.
Right.
But I think in the long run, I will like it. And I think it's a smart play because Twitter is trying to play in the social space. And you look at all of the other social channels and they have such an emphasis on visuals. So I can understand the play, and I do think it'll end up being positive, but I will say it's taking me at least a little bit of time to get used to.
Right.
Sarah, what do you think?
I think Twitter's recognizing that people are spending more time on desktop as well. And so this is making the desktop experience more visual too. They announced earlier this year about changing TweetDeck. I still don't have the change to TweetDeck. I wish I had the change to TweetDeck because it would be much more visually appealing. I could actually see everything that I'm posting too. But I think it's inevitable. I think we knew 6 or 7 years ago that video was going to be a bigger player in social media. It's taken a little longer to get there than we thought it was going to. And I think what Twitter has to their advantage is that they still have the links and the retweets, and the content is still playing well too. So this just adds a little bit of a bonus to them. And I have to say, I don't use the Twitter app as much as I should. Whenever I get into the Twitter app, I'm like, oh, I love Twitter. And then I forget, or I'm doing something else on my phone.
I almost only use the app. I only almost use, I don't use desktop as much, but you said desktop and I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense for the desktop user.
Right. But I mostly use TweetDeck. So that's how I manage the multiple Twitter accounts that I have to manage. And talk about a fire hose coming at you. I just have columns and columns and columns. So I'm really looking forward to the new TweetDeck.
So I've been using, and for Twitter management, like I was using, so I use Agorapulse to do my social media management there. So all of the Twitter accounts, I think it's a little easier to do. I think also part of it also was then I wanted features, but like the Twitter app didn't have them. So I moved to I think it was Tweetbot, and then Tweetbot moved to a subscription service. So then I'm back to now the regular Twitter app, given the price, because I'm like, no, I don't want to pay a subscription service for, a piece of, for an app, for example. So, I've gravitated back towards the Twitter mobile app for certain things, but I will say I'd prefer to use it on desktop. I like, because again, it depends on what your use case is. If you're always mobile, then yes, mobile makes sense. But if you're, for example, not always mobile and not being out so often, having it on desktop, I think makes sense. But I like the fact that they have the features across them versus, I have to kind of pick and choose. So
right.
Very cool. Anything else you want to add on this? I mean, if I'm a business, I think for me, the big thing is just create your content as usual. Just know that if they're an iOS, if your users are iOS, they may get a different view.
Right.
Well, emphasis on imagery, quality imagery, which has been the case for the dawn of time. But now there's more emphasis.
Right.
Exactly.
And Brooke, do the images that are imported from websites, is that going edge to edge too? Because I don't have the update yet either.
Everything that I've seen is edge to edge. I haven't seen anything that didn't fit the space. So it's like they're squeezing it in. And I haven't seen anything that's distorted yet either. So that's an interesting tech question.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So all of that metadata that you build into your web pages that has the image that's going to port over to your social media posts will be edge to edge too. So that's sort of the question that I'm getting at with that. So, which is good.
Fantastic.
I won't get all cut up.
So just a couple quick notes for everybody who's watching, by the way. So what we're going to do, we have a couple other topics, but what we're going to do actually, so that we can spend some time chatting with Brooke here, we're going to put those in the blog post that's going to go out over the weekend. So that'll be at socialchefs.com/SC308. We're going to cover a couple other topics. I think we've got some Facebook gaming topics. I think we've got some social media usage statistics, which I think is pretty fascinating. As well as I think there's maybe an update for WhatsApp users. So if you're a WhatsApp desktop user, you'll want to check that one out. Sarah, let's turn it over to you. Let's talk with Brooke.
Sure. Let's talk to Brooke. Hooray. So it's great having you here, Brooke, because you have a different approach to these online communications in general, right? And so when we talk to guests lately, we've been asking the big, hairy question of what your approach is. And I know you are more about conversation versus campaign, which I think is a refreshing way to look at customer care. And so we want to give you a little bit of time to explain what is that difference and what does that mean?
So, I mean, if you think about life in general, right? Us as people, hello is the start of everything. At B Squared Media, we like to say a simple hello can lead to a million things. It's probably how you met your significant other. It's probably how you start every email. But somewhere along the way with marketing and sales and marketing, we've lost the emphasis on the conversation. And marketing's become all about the pitch, right? So marketing has merged into sales, and customer care is somewhere in there too, right? And we're not talking to the customer anymore. We're talking at the customer. We've gone from conversations to call to actions. So, I think the mindset that companies need to have, and the smart companies already have, is that your would-be communities and customers, right? Or your current customers and communities aren't starved for content. They aren't starved for the stretched wider images on Twitter. They're starved for connection. And that starts with a hello and a conversation. So that's what I mean, and that's what we mean when we say think conversation, not campaign.
Fantastic. It's a great, that's just great feedback there. So Sarah, let me know if you're ready, and we got another question for Brooke, I think, right?
Yeah, we do. So how do you focus? So what does that look like? I guess let's talk more practically about what does that look like, and how do you focus on customer care and conversation? And I think we have another question about social listening, but let's start with that. How does that look? Because we're all used to scheduling out, here's the campaign. We're going to do this at this time. This message will have this nice story and nice image, and then the call to action. So how do you make it more organic and let go of those tropes that we have with marketing?
I think it starts with listening, right? You can't be a good communicator unless you're a good listener. We have a tendency, especially marketers, a lot of marketers are out there for the spotlight and the applause. A lot of brands are out there for the spotlight and the applause, which means they're not really listening. Like, you can see it really easily. You can see the brands who retweet user-generated content, but there's no conversation that happens. Then you can also see the brands and the marketers who say thank you, or say thank you, what did you love about it? They're continuing that conversation. So I think you have to A, be a good listener, be willing to listen, and then B, go deeper than the cliche thank you for posting, or thank you for commenting, or just retweeting UGC if you're a brand. You have to get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation. It's an actual conversation. I really nerdy for a second. I did my undergraduate thesis on the social penetration theory, which was two social psychologists back in the 60s came up with this theory, but it applies today. And what they said was, the deeper we go with disclosures in conversation, meaning Sarah, you and I are getting to know each other. And I'm like, hey, my name's Brooke. And you're like, hey, my name's Sarah. And how's the weather looking where you are? Oh, it's going to rain. That's very cliche, right? We're not getting into any crux of disclosures. But if we start to give each other opinions and feelings, like my opinion is I hate Facebook, but I love Twitter. And then feelings like I feel happy when I'm in Maine by the water. As they start to disclose information like that, opinions, feelings, interests to you, you take those in and you disclose information to me. And through those disclosures, through that deeper conversation, we start to build relationships and trust. So I think, that's a really roundabout way of saying you have to listen, but you also have to go deeper. You can't pretend to build a relationship with someone, including your consumer or your customer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a really good one.
And what's interesting is that the different platforms are appreciating that, not just saying, oh, looks good or thumbs up or whatever in the comments, but the more you actually write a complete sentence and are positively framed, that especially Instagram rewards you for that, right? Your organic information, your organic posts gets out to more people. You're sharing more information because you're being a good community member on that platform.
Yeah. The affinity variable in most of the social algorithms looks at how much do I engage with your brand or with you as a person, and how deep do we go? So you'll start to see that if you have that back and forth conversation, especially with, say, like your key customers or your key advocates, that they'll start to pop up more in your feed, and you'll start to pop up more in their feed. It's really important to go past cliche, get to opinions and feelings, right? So it goes cliches, facts, opinions, feelings. Feelings are as deep as we can go. You don't want to maybe start off talking about feelings, but like everybody's sitting at cliche. A lot of us are sitting as at facts. Hardly anyone's going to those opinions and those feelings. But when you look at brands who do that, like Nike, like Subaru, you can see they have a very loyal fan base, and loyalty is so hard to attain today. So you're not going to get loyalty if you can't go deep.
Absolutely. No, and off of that, I mean, I think this is just, it's great advice, because like, even like putting in perspective, like YouTube. So for example, somebody comments on your YouTube video. Again, it's not about like, it's, phase one is like, okay, I give you a thumbs up. I give you a like. How do we take that further? It's
cliche. Yeah, that's cliche.
Let's reply to them. Okay. Are we going to say thank you? Okay. Yeah.
That's
some of them we may want to say thank you, but how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them, tuning in? Or how do you keep them watching your videos? How do you keep them engaged in the conversation? You might say thank you, but then let's take it one more step further. Thank you, for example. Then you might say, what was your favorite part of this week's show, for example? So
yes, you're eliciting an opinion, possibly even a feeling from your community member. And then you have to make sure you reciprocate, right? Because we're talking about relationship building. It's no different than us building our own relationships. You have to reciprocate. It's a two-way street. If you're constantly talking about yourself and living in cliches and facts, it's going to be a long road for you.
Excellent point. Yeah. So Sarah, I think we got one more question for Brooke, right?
Yes. So what is one thing that, or maybe two or three, we got a couple minutes, maybe 2 or 3 things that a business can do this week and this next week. Think about it over the weekend and start doing on Monday. What are 3 things that a business can do to move from campaign to conversation?
That's a great question. Okay. I think number 1 would be to realize that people, not technology, are most critical in meeting your customers' needs. So everybody like ran to AI and chatbots, and they're trying to solve all of these really difficult customer care and support issues with bots. And what we've seen with our client base is the bots never really solve the problem, but the people do. So people first, right? Teams, not tech, people, not technology. Number 2, I think it's important to realize that customer care happens at every stage of the customer journey. We tend to hear customer care or customer support or customer experience, and we just hone in on that customer word, and we start to think about it being a post-purchase thing, but it's not post-purchase. It literally follows throughout the entire customer journey. It's pre-purchase all the way to post-purchase advocacy, loyalty, and beyond. And I think adding to that as number 3 or 2B would be that if you think about it, customer care is the only marketing initiative that you have that supports both acquiring customers pre-purchase and retaining customers and gaining loyalty post-purchase. So I don't understand why everybody doesn't have this as number one on their must-do list, because I can't think of any other marketing initiative that both acquires and retains customers.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Wow, I was ever making some notes, and I mean, I'm like looking at these. I'm like, oh, these are just great tweetables. Like, this is really good. This is really good, solid information. I mean,
I'm obviously passionate about it, but it's like, to me, it's like it's so basic. It makes so much sense, but there's still some education, I guess, that's needed.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's a business piece too. I come from the nonprofit world, and this is all of this is donor relationships. You know, it's something that we have always done. It's part of the DNA of the nonprofit world, and marketing really needs to adopt this.
Agreed. And that's probably why I come from this place, is because I do have a nonprofit background. So, you know, the customer, the donor was everything. Mm-hmm. We centered everything we did. And I think number 4, that's another thing. We need to stop looking at customer care as a cost center and start looking at it as the center of our business, much like nonprofits, right? The donor, the customer is the center of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually, that's a great point, actually, because a lot of businesses, they always say, like, okay, you know what, like, how do we, like, what are the problems we're solving for our customers? And then the answer is very simple. All you need to do is go back to your customer care. You need to go back to your support team, for example, the people that interface with your customers most often, and ask them, you know what, hey, as you're interfacing with customers, what are the problems that you're noticing, or what are the questions you're noticing? That's going to help define. It's going to help define the next product you launch. It's going to help define, you know, where do you need to make tweaks here and there to things. You know, it's not just like, oh, well, yeah, they're helping customers solve, you know, their technical issues. It actually could mean, you know, within your organization, hey, there are some things that we need to potentially tweak because we're noticing the same kind of pattern come in from customers. Something may not be right there, or maybe there's, you know, a little small tweak that you need to make to get it corrected. So,
what we say is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what we say is a complaint shouldn't be seen as a negative event. It should be seen as a moment to bond, to strengthen that relationship with the customer and fix something. They are coming to you and giving you the invaluable, I would even say, messaging of, this is what's wrong with your product or service. I like you, so I'm telling you, right? Even though it doesn't always come across that nice. But if you can see it in that way and try to bond with that customer and fix whatever it is that's wrong. You know, I won't say the customer's always right, but a lot of times they really are upset because something that you're providing isn't meeting their needs. And the research is showing that right now, especially based on what's happening with the pandemic, they're faster than ever to leave and go to someone else. So,
Right. And you can use all of that great data to anticipate the needs of the next customer too, right?
Oh my
you
gosh,
may not be able to fix something right away, but you can anticipate that that's going to be a problem. You know, I think of a piece of my car. It's like, I don't know where this switch is. They're like, yeah, the manual doesn't really say it. So let's show it to you. And so they just make it part of, we're going to show you how to do this for the next customer. So
we actually help a lot of our clients, our customer care clients, through social listening, kind of to tag and categorize where the complaints are coming from and what they're about, so that they can take that back to product development or their product marketers and say, like, we're having these problems. How can we fix it? And then we can at least go back to the customer if we can't fix it right away, right? If it's something that's would have to go back to development and say, thank you so much. We've actually sent this to our product developers and it's in the queue for getting addressed and fixed.
Excellent. No, excellent point. This is some excellent information. Sarah, is there anything else you want to add to this week's show?
No. Well, one quick thing to add, just in this relationship building aspect is the follow-up. Brooke and I, and Christian, you are too, because I know we've had lots of conversations about this, but that follow-up is really important, you know, that post-sale follow-up. And so our tool of the week, which we'll put into the blog, is a tool where you can schedule those follow-ups or schedule those reminders. So your calendar doesn't get clogged with all those ticklers if you're not using something like Salesforce or a big donor database management where you can click off the little ticks, but you can sort of say, okay, in a couple of weeks, I need to follow up with Brooke. I had a great conversation, and I want to follow up with one of the tips that she gave me, and maybe we can incorporate that into XYZ. And so you can just schedule out an email to send to you.
Definitely. Yeah. And that tool, by the way, it's free all the way up to like $9 a month. But basically what it does is you send an email to yourself. So instead of keeping those emails in your inbox, you put it as a BCC feature. I know we're all guilty of this. I think that's what Brooke's laughing about. You have an email and you're like, oh, well, I started. And then you get 50 more emails and it's down, on another page and you forget about it. So for something like that, very simple, you just add their email address to your email you're sending out. And it might say, follow up in 2 days, 2 days at FollowUpThen or something like that. And it will then remind you to do that follow-up. So that way you can actually make sure you get it done, get it out of your inbox. So
or it doesn't sit in your outbox. That's what I hate about Outlook, is that those scheduled emails sit in my outbox and I think, oh my gosh, what didn't send? When did the internet go down and not send? So
same.
Yeah. But
fantastic. This has been a great show. I just have one last question for you, Brooke, and that's where can people connect with you?
Sure. So if you're on Twitter, again, my favorite platform, that's where I spend the majority of my time on social. I'm just at Brooke Sellas, BROOKESELLAS. Our website is b2.media. So it's a not com. So it's .media, not .com. And you can also find all of my social sites there, all of the company social sites there, and more information on customer care. We've got a free customer care quiz. We just released a report about, the changes to customer care based on the pandemic. So I highly encourage you to visit and play around, or tweet me if you need something specific.
So Sarah, how about you? Are we still on LinkedIn?
We're still on LinkedIn, but people can find me at Sarah Monroe VT across social media, and drop me a message and let me know that you found me on Social Chatter.
Again, that's also, putting this into the perspective of like customer care. If somebody reaches out to you on social, don't just say, hey, connect with me. Tell them where they, to tell you, where do they find you at, for example. So then this way you can learn more about them. And then you might learn something from your customer right there, for example. So use that as an opportunity, to learn more about your customers. And also I'm at Social Chefs on all the social platforms as well. But with that, just a couple of quick notes. We're going to have the blog post recap, socialchefs.com/SC308. That's going to go out over the weekend. We're going to add the tool of the week. We're going to add some commentary from Brooke, in addition to some of the topics we didn't cover. With that, we're going to see you all next Thursday with Kate Payne. I think is it 10 a.m. still, or are we still kind of working on the time?
We're still working on the time. It'll be 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., but definitely follow us and you'll get some great LinkedIn advice from Kate.
She did my LinkedIn. Shout out to Kate. She's amazing.
Fantastic. This has been a lot of fun. Again, Brooke, I want to thank you for joining us for this week's show. With that, we'll see you all next Thursday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.